Daneil Dubois knocks out Anthony Joshua in the 5th round. Every single punch was like a dynamite exploded on Joshua's head. The power difference was massive. Every single time Dubois hit him, Joshua would be stumbling, rocked, and ultimately knocked down. Joshua got knocked down realistically 4 times. They only counted 3 knockdowns before the KO, but he did get knocked out another time, which the referee did not count. Joshua got hit clean, and you can see how he reaches to the ground, touches the canvas with both of his hands. In boxing, if you touch the canvas with your gloves, that counts as a knockdown. So 4 knockdowns and then a knockout for Daneil Dubois. What an impressive feat, man. It wasn't like this guy had an incredible reach. Only 78 inches for the heavyweight division, full of guys who are like 6'5" plus. And the reason why I talk about the reach is because the overhand that Dubois hit Joshua with was a punch that Joshua's chin never recovered from. And all he did is just swing that over from distance. That's it. For some reason, Joshua kept bringing his left hand down, exposing the left side of his chin, and that's where the overhand landed. From there on out, Joshua was even getting rocked by jabs. Simple jabs were causing him to stumble all around the ring, and Dubois even got a knockdown off of a jab, which is crazy. You can see where the jab lands, and the other 2 hooks that Dubois throws at Joshua were blocked. One of them partially gets through, but it wasn't like a power punch meant to knock him out or anything. It was just the jab that landed clean. And when Joshua tried to rotate and pivot, he lost balance because he was still hurt from all the other punches that Dubois hit him with in the fight. I mean, what kind of power does Dubois have in those fists? Or does Joshua just have a weaker chin than ever? Maybe because he did rock himself at one point by throwing his head into Dubois' hip, hurting himself by ducking into the hip of Dubois. This guy has to be made out of steel or something. We actually saw something similar in MMA where a fighter ran his head into the opponent's hip and got knocked out for it. It's a very bony part of the body. You know, it can cause a lot of damage if you like run your hip into someone and they're ducking into it. That collision can actually be very massive. But in boxing, that's not a knockdown, right? That's not going to be counted by the referee. But from the first time that Joshua was rocked, he was just swinging any kind of power punch he can throw. At that point, he was just trying to hope to land some kind of punch to knock Dubois out because technically he wasn't going to be able to win that fight. So if you're wondering why was Joshua just swinging recklessly with the right hand, he needed to get a knockout, right? You could tell that his legs were not stable. He wasn't able to dictate distance that well. I mean, he didn't have good depth perception after he got rocked, and that's why that one jab from Dubois rocked him yet again. He didn't really defend it, right? Joshua, all he did was just move backwards with his hands down, and that's why he started to resort to telegraphed and obvious power punches, just hoping one of those lands on Dubois. But most of the time he was throwing recklessly. Dubois was able to evade and counter. I mean, look at the way he was able to bob and weave under the left hook of Joshua. Joshua's left hook is coming out very wide, and Dubois can easily see the punch, so he ducks under it, weaves to the right side, and lands his own left hook in between of both of Joshua's hands. Big shot lands to the chin and rocks Joshua yet again. That exchange reminded me of Mike Tyson. Like, can you imagine if Mike Tyson was fighting Anthony Joshua there, and he would have done the same exact movement, the bob and weave left hook counter? Daneil Dubois did it pretty well, but nobody does it like Mike Tyson. I don't know, this exchange is like, it just reminded me of some of the highlights or some of the fights of Mike Tyson back in the day. And it goes to show you how good some of those older boxers actually were. Joshua took more damage in this fight than I think any other fight he's ever had in his career. And when Joshua swung this power punch from a distance, Dubois just simply leaned back enough to avoid the punch, tried to counter with his own left hook, but Joshua was ducking way low. So Dubois knew just to get a better position instead of looking to land his punches. So he pivots and forearm frames, not on Joshua, but kind of to align himself on where he needs to be, knowing where Joshua is going to posture back up, because Joshua has to exit from that exchange. Look at that beautiful angle from Dubois. Looks for the right hand that hits the back of the head of Joshua, and he tried to follow up with a huge left uppercut, and his reach was just a little too short. And following up with the right hand, that's when Joshua ducked under and threw his head into Dubois' hip. But eventually, Joshua lands. He finally lands the punch he's been looking for ever since he got dropped in the first round. He lands the right hand finally. But that punch gave Joshua a sense of victory, where he also became reckless and abandoned his own defense to get a knockout. But the recovery on Dubois was very impressive. Way better than Joshua's, right? The first time Joshua got hit by a big right hand, he was rocked for the entire fight practically. When Joshua lands his big right hand, Dubois got hurt, but he recovered very quickly, like literally seconds after, and he didn't drop his hands when Joshua was trying to follow up for the knockout. Look how he's blocking himself, being defensively responsible. Joshua lowers both of his hands, loading up for the big right hand to try to get the knockout. Overhand right, touches Dubois, but Dubois also slightly leaning away while posting his left arm. And notice, Dubois is aware on the back foot, loading up his right hand to counter, but he doesn't throw it. He doesn't see the opening that he wants, so he does it again. Joshua throws another overhand right and lands it this time, but Dubois absorbs the power punch like a tank, leaned back, loaded up the right hand again, and lands the punch on Joshua, stunning him as Joshua was trying to throw the left hook. As you know, straight punches usually beat looping punches in MMA and boxing It's just kind of like the nature of the way the punches are thrown. When a straight punch meets a looping punch, it's going to go from point A to point B on a straight line, which is faster and on the inside of the looping punch from landing. So in a way, the straight punch can also block the looping punch from landing, using the shoulder or using the arm. So because Joshua got countered there, he tries for another power punch, this time an uppercut, but again, lowers his hands as he throws it. This is a bolo style uppercut, where he's kind of like sacrificing defense for offense. And because he lowered the left hand, Dubois was able to touch his chin with his right overhand. Not much power thrown with it, but you don't need to wind up for a knockout shot. Precision punching is more important, and Joshua goes out from that punch. I mean, all the other shots he hit Joshua with, rocked him, stunned him, got him stumbling around the ring, all that stuff, right? But then this kind of punch, which is the weakest punch he threw, was the one that got the knockout. That there shows you don't need to wind up shots, you don't need to draw your right hand back as far as you can to throw it in order to get a knockout. In fact, a lot of those kind of punches aren't the ones that get knockouts. It's the short punches that the opponent doesn't see, and that could be a jab, it could be a short overhand like that. Those are usually the shots that get the knockouts. And in boxing, like sometimes you'll see when a fighter is throwing a 1-2-3 combination and their right straight is going to be their power hand, it's usually the left hook in that combination that gets the knockout more than the right straight, even though the left hand is not their dominant hand, and it's not the punch with the most amount of power, but it's the punch that usually lands on the opponent without them seeing it, right? They can see the jab, which is the first initial punch, a setup for the right straight left hook. They see the load up on the right straight, but the left hook is always like the sneakiest punch in that combination, and those are usually the punches that get the knockouts. So amazing performance by Daneil Dubois, knocking out Anthony Joshua. And honestly, like I said in the beginning, this really shows how good Usyk is, because Usyk knocked Dubois out. So Usyk is 100% the best heavyweight on the planet. He beat Tyson Fury, he beat Dubois, who's going to be ranked amongst the best heavyweights on the planet after this win against Joshua. And maybe you could do a fight with him and Fury, but then again, I know a lot of people do want to see the rematch with Fury and Usyk, but I think Fury versus Dubois is the better fight, or even Parker. Right, Joseph Parker is doing really well. That would actually be pretty cool. You could do Dubois versus Parker, and then like Fury versus Joshua. But I don't think any boxer would beat Usyk. He has a win against Fury, he has a win against Joshua, 2 wins against Joshua, he has a win against Dubois. Like, Alexander Usyk is a special heavyweight talent, and has clearly dominated the current heavyweight era. Like, every era you got some kind of heavyweight great, right? You had Muhammad Ali, you had Mike Tyson, you had Joe Louis, you had Rocky Marciano back in the day, you had Lennox Lewis, you had the Klitschko brothers, and now it's Alexander Usyk, one of the few heavyweight champions that has cleaned out the best fighters in his division. Like, you have to go back to Muhammad Ali beating George Foreman and Joe Frazier and Ken Norton and all those guys. Not saying Usyk is as good as Muhammad Ali, but he's a very high level heavyweight boxer and could go down as one of the greatest heavyweights of all time. But personally, I still have Ali as the greatest. I hope you guys enjoyed the breakdown, and if you did, make sure to give the video a like, make sure to subscribe, hit the bell for notifications, and I'll see you guys in the next video.